The cardboard under my back had flattened into a soft imprint after nearly 3 months of use, its edges curled from moisture and the slow drip of winter rain that leaked through the cracked sunroof of my '08 Toyota. I pressed my palm against the inside of the car window, watching as my breath bloomed into perfect little circles on the glass. Outside, a single street lamp cast long, slow-moving shadows over the forgotten parking lot behind what used to be a hardware store. That's where I'd been sleeping since October. My daughter Kelsey's voice still echoed in my ears from our last call. "Just stay in your car a little while longer, Mom. We're overwhelmed with the baby coming. You get it, right?" I got it. I got more than she realized. The flood had swallowed everything. My little yellow house on Cedar Lane, the baby photos, the birthday cards, my grandmother's china, 40 years of a quiet life. Insurance covered the walls and roof, the structure, but not the life that filled them. At 62, I was left with a 12-year-old Toyota, a soggy suitcase, and 3 blouses that still smelled like river silt no matter how many times I washed them. Kelsey had sounded sympathetic at first. "Of course you can stay with us, Mom, just until you're back on your feet." But just turned into weeks, and weeks turned into clipped conversations, loud sighs, and notes from her husband Darren taped to the fridge. Notes about how much I was using the hot water. Notes about how grocery bills had gone up since I arrived. The morning I left, Kelsey was spooning oatmeal into her 18-month-old Ava. She barely looked up. "That might be for the best," she had said when I told her I was going to figure things out on my own. "Darren's been really tense about work, and you know how he gets when he's stressed." I knew. I knew exactly how Darren got. He got quiet. He got mean. He got real comfortable, making me feel like a trespasser in what was supposed to be my temporary home. Now, lying in the back seat of my car with a winter coat wrapped around me like a half-frozen cocoon, I wondered if this was how my own mother had felt toward the end. Forgotten. In the way. Love, when it became inconvenient, had a funny way of retreating. My phone buzzed against my chest. A text from Kelsey. "Hope you're okay. Darren got the promotion. We're house hunting now. Baby number 2 is due in April. Baby, bottle, pink heart." I stared at the message until the screen faded to black. She hoped I was okay. Hoped while I slept in a car in December in upstate New York, while she celebrated square footage and nursery wallpaper and expanding families. The next morning, like every other morning, I drove to the public library and parked near the side entrance. I'd learned the timing of the staff shift, how to blend in with the early researchers and students. The head librarian, a kind woman named Rosa McNally, had long since stopped asking questions. She'd just nod as I walked past toward the same row of computers I used each day. It was there, in the hush of a Tuesday afternoon, that everything changed. The email looked like spam at first, subject line, estate notification, attention Nora Freeman. I almost deleted it, but something in me, curiosity, or maybe just that small flicker of hope that never completely dies, made me click. I had to read the sender twice before it registered. Hollis, Benton, and Reeves, estate attorneys. My heart sped up. "We represent the estate of your late Aunt Vivian Monroe. We've been attempting to reach you regarding a bequest left in her will. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience." I sat frozen. Aunt Vivian? My mother's younger sister? The one who moved to California in the '80s and faded from birthdays and phone calls? I hadn't heard her name in decades. I thought she was already long gone. And yet, she'd remembered me. The call to the law office felt like something out of a dream. I gave my name. They asked me to hold. "Yes, Vivian Monroe left her entire estate to you. The property is in Ventura County, California. The house alone is worth about $870,000. There are investment accounts, a life insurance policy. After minor debts, you're looking at approximately $1.3 million, Ms. Freeman." I didn't speak. I couldn't. The library continued around me like normal. Kids giggling in the story corner, an old man thumbing through the classifieds. Normal people in a normal world. While I sat there, homeless, unwashed, and shaking, realizing I just inherited a fortune. I drove back to the parking lot in a daze, half convinced I'd hallucinated the entire thing. But the lawyer's number was real, the email was real. I almost called Kelsey right then. I imagined her voice brightening with interest the moment she heard the numbers. Imagined Darren doing calculations on his phone before the call even ended. But something in me, maybe the same part that slept in a frozen car while she decorated a nursery, stopped me. Instead, I drove to the cheapest motel I could find and handed over enough cash for 3 nights. The clerk gave me a key without looking up. The first thing I did was take a shower. A long one, hot enough to make my skin red. I stared at myself in the mirror afterward. Hollow cheeks, thinner than I remembered, tired eyes, wary and wide. But something else was there, too. A flicker of recognition. The woman I'd been before the flood, before the pity, before Darren's notes and Kelsey's deflections. I stayed up late that night on the motel's spotty Wi-Fi, scrolling through images of the house Aunt Vivian had left me. A craftsman-style bungalow with a wide porch and fruit trees in the backyard. The listing said it needed work, cosmetic repairs, some updates, but it was standing. It had walls and a roof. It had warmth. It had possibility. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Kelsey. Haven't heard from you, just checking in. Avis teething again. Darren says hi. I stared at it, typed 3 different responses, deleted each one. Finally, I wrote, I'm figuring some things out. Then turned off the phone. The next morning, I bought a one-way ticket to California with the cash I'd been hoarding for an apartment deposit. My entire life fit into 2 grocery bags and a purse. I left the motel key on the nightstand, stepped outside into the frozen morning air, and started the car. It turned over on the first try, like even the Toyota knew it was time to go. But I didn't drive straight to the airport. I took one final detour, past Kelsey's house. It was the kind of place real estate agents called cozy, with peeling shutters and toddler toys strewn across the lawn. Darren's truck sat in the driveway. I parked across the street, watched the windows. I thought about knocking and telling them, watching their faces shift when they realized I was no longer someone to be pitied. But then I remembered what Kelsey had said the morning I left. That might be for the best. And I remembered all the nights I'd lain awake in a freezing car while she planned dinner parties and gender reveals. Sometimes the people who say they love you best when you require the least. I put the car in drive. The house faded in my rearview mirror. Ahead of me, California waited. And with it, the chance to figure out who I could become when I no longer had to beg for a place in someone else's life. The California sun hit different. Even in December, the air carried warmth, not just in temperature, but in the way it wrapped around you, soft and slow, like it wasn't in a hurry for you to prove anything. The flight had been smooth, almost suspiciously so. My seatmate was a college kid who didn't say a word the entire trip, too absorbed in her headphones to notice the woman beside her clutching a plastic shopping bag with everything she owned inside. When we landed at LAX, a man in charcoal suit held a sign with my name, Miss Freeman. The law office had arranged a car service. Apparently, that's what people do when you've inherited over $1 million. They send drivers with clean cars and bottled water in the cup holders. The driver's name was Marco. Late 50s, maybe, with a lined face and the kind of calm that made you want to tell him your life story. First time in California? He asked, pulling onto the freeway with effortless confidence. In 40 years, I replied, watching the skyline slide past. What brings you back? A house. And a second chance. He nodded slowly, glancing at me in the mirror. Funny how life does that. People close to you can forget you exist, and then someone you barely knew hands you the keys to something better. I didn't answer, but the words hit their mark. The house sat on a corner in a quiet neighborhood called Valencia Hill. It looked just like the photos. Wide porch, worn steps, orange trees bending under the weight of fruit. The paint was chipped, the shutters hung crooked on one side, but it was beautiful. It was mine. A man stood at the gate in a navy suit. He looked like he was trying not to judge my outfit, jeans and the cleanest sweater I had left from New York. "Miss Freeman," he said, extending a hand. "Robert Langston. I am handling the estate." His grip was light, but his eyes were sharp. "Your aunt spoke of you fondly. I just assumed—" Well, never mind. He handed me a folder thick with documents. "Shall we take a look inside?" The front door creaked open into a house that smelled faintly of lavender and books. Hardwood floors stretched from wall to wall, worn but solid. The living room had built-in shelves packed with paperbacks, photos, and houseplants that had somehow survived without their owner. "She lived alone?" I asked. "Yes, for the last few years, but not always. Vivian shared her life with someone for decades, a woman named Evelyn Cross. They were together 36 years. Evelyn passed in 2020. He pointed to a photo on the mantel. Two older women sitting on the porch swing, one dark-haired and smiling wide, the other silver-haired with her hand resting gently on the other's thigh. Love. Quiet and unapologetic. "She never recovered from losing her," he added softly. "She didn't have kids?" "No. Evelyn had a son from a previous marriage. They were estranged. He contested the will when Evelyn left everything to Vivian. Ugly situation." It made sense now. Why Vivian had chosen me. Not because we were close, but because we were the same kind of forgotten. I wandered room by room, trailing my fingers along the furniture, the window frames, the little notepads by the phone. Everything felt intentional, curated, a life someone had taken the time to build and protect. "She owned it outright," Robert said, flipping through a few documents. "No mortgage. She also kept a sizable investment portfolio. She was practical, careful. Everything in this binder now belongs to you." The numbers were printed clearly. House value, $870,000. Investments and cash, $427,000. Final total, $1.29 million post fees. He handed me the keys. "The neighbors have been checking on the place. Mrs. Delgado next door has a spare key and was quite concerned about who would end up with the house. You might want to introduce yourself." After he left, I stood in the kitchen for a long time staring at the note taped to the fridge in loopy handwriting. "For whoever waters the plants and checks the mail, there's wine in the pantry and cookies in the blue tin. Thank you. V." That night I slept in a real bed. Vivian's bed. The sheets smelled like lavender and something warmer, like memory. The mattress was soft but firm, and the walls held the kind of silence you only get in a house that's truly yours. I slept with the window cracked just enough to hear the breeze rustle the trees in the backyard. And when I woke, for the first time in months, I didn't have to figure out where to go. I was already home. The next day, I knocked on the neighbor's door. Mrs. Delgado was in her 70s, short, with white curls and a voice like a songbird. "Oh, honey," she said when I introduced myself. "Vivian's niece. She talked about you all the time. Nora this, Nora that. You were her girl." I blinked hard. We hadn't spoken in years. "Still, she kept up with you, asked about you, worried. She had a feeling something was wrong last year. She said she had changed her will just in case." That afternoon, I called Kelsey. Her voice picked up fast. "Mom, finally! Where are you?" "I'm California." A pause. California? What are you doing there? Did you find a job? Something like that, I said, watching the light spill through the kitchen windows. I inherited a house and some money from Aunt Vivian. She didn't speak. Not right away. Aunt Vivian? She said finally. I thought she passed away years ago. She did. Just recently. How much money? There it was. Not, I'm so sorry. Not, are you okay? Just, how much money? Enough. Well, wow, that's great. Darren and I were just talking about how to help you get back on your feet. This solves everything. What are you coming home? I looked at the peach tree outside the kitchen window, at the porch swing where two women had once sat, holding hands, like the world didn't need to understand. I'm not sure I am coming home. Kelsey's voice sharpened. What do you mean? Your life is here. Ava misses you. And with the new baby? I thought about the car, the cold, the silence that had met me every night as I curled into myself in the dark. You managed just fine when I was homeless. That's not fair. We let you stay with us. For 6 weeks, until Darren got tired of seeing me. She didn't deny it. We're family, Mom. This inheritance is great and all, but don't throw everything away just because of a rough patch. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm building something. That night, I turned off my phone and sat on the porch, a cup of tea warming my hands. Mrs. Delgado waved from her yard. The neighborhood felt quiet, safe. Mine. Tomorrow, I'd start thinking about paint colors, about how to rearrange the kitchen, about what it meant to take back a life and make it my own. 3 weeks in California had reshaped me more than I could have imagined. The woman who'd stepped off that plane with 2 grocery bags and a wallet full of grief was no longer who I saw in the mirror. My face had color again. My shoulders no longer curled forward like they were bracing for bad news. Even the fine lines around my eyes seemed less tired. Each morning began the same way. Coffee on the front porch, wrapped in the blue cardigan I'd found in Vivian's guest closet, watching Mrs. Delgado tend her roses next door. She always waved. Sometimes she'd call out something like, "You missed a flyer from the community board," or "Book club's reading Steinbeck next month. You'd like it." She was right. I did like it. The house was slowly becoming mine through little rituals. I moved Vivian's antique books into a spare room and placed the 3 I'd salvaged from my old house on the main shelf. Warped, stained, but still legible. I reorganized the kitchen to match my habits, swapped drawer handles, wiped down every cabinet until it shined. And then I hung the one thing that had survived the flood, my mother's quilt. I'd saved it from the wreckage, bundled it in a trash bag, and carried it like a lifeline. I hung it in the living room now, across the largest wall, where the afternoon sun caught its faded fabric and brought out the stories woven into every patch. For once, I wasn't surviving. I was existing. Maybe even thriving. My phone had been blissfully quiet. Until that morning. Kelsey. I watched her name flash on the screen while sipping coffee on the porch. I let it ring the first time, the second. On the third, I answered. "Mom, thank God, I've been worried sick." "I'm okay, Kelsey." "You never text back, you never call. I know you're mad at us, but this is extreme." "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm adjusting." "To what? You can't just disappear and play house in California like none of this ever happened." I stared out across the street. A father was walking his dog. A delivery driver waved at someone from a porch 2 doors down. People knew each other here. They looked each other in the eye. "You said I needed space, so I took it." She hesitated. "Frank and I have been talking. Of course. And we think it would be good for you to come home. Whatever this isn't you. You're not this person. I think I am. You don't even know anyone there. You don't have a job. You don't have a plan. You can't just isolate yourself and pretend it's a fresh start. But it is, I said calmly. You've got to stop acting like we abandoned you. You were going through something. I was homeless for 3 months. That's not a something. That's a crisis. Another pause. You weren't homeless. You were just between options. I smiled without humor. Is that what you told yourselves while I was sleeping in a car in December? She sighed, exasperated. We thought you needed time. Darren was under a lot of pressure with the promotion. The baby was coming. We did what we could. No, I said gently. You did what was convenient. There was silence on the line. Then, well, anyway, we're coming out to visit. My spine stiffened. You're what? We found a good deal on tickets. Darren has vacation time he needs to use up. We thought it would be a good chance to see the house, maybe help you sort through things. Help me? Yes, you don't know anyone there. It's not safe to be on your own like that. We want to support you. You mean assess the situation? Excuse me? I mean, you want to see how much I inherited. That's not fair. It's accurate. There was a long pause. Then she softened her voice, tried her warmest tone. We're family, Mom. Families don't let each other drift off like this. I didn't answer right away. I was watching a hummingbird flit around Mrs. Delgado's feeder. When do you get in? Saturday afternoon. I'll pick you up. Oh, good. And we'll stay nearby. Darren found a hotel with a good rate. Of course they wouldn't stay with me. They wouldn't ask. They wouldn't offer. Because staying in my home would mean acknowledging that I had one. And they weren't ready for that. After the call, I sat on the porch with my hands in my lap, staring out at the street. Mrs. Delgado called out from her rose bushes. You okay, honey? You've gone still. My daughter's coming to visit, I said. Her eyebrows rose. That's good, isn't it? I gave a small shrug. She thinks I've lost my mind, thinks I'm playing house in someone else's life. Mrs. Delgado leaned her arms on the fence between our yards. You know, your aunt went through the same thing. Vivian. She did? Oh, yes. Her sister came out here decades ago, tried to convince her to move back to Ohio, said she needed a man, needed structure, said California was making her weird. I blanked. My mom did that? She did. Came with her husband and opinions, tried to pull Vivian back into a version of herself she'd outgrown. Stayed a few days, left in a huff when Vivian didn't budge. I pictured it. The arguments, the disapproving glances, the way Vivian probably smiled politely while thinking, I already made my choice. You know what Vivian told me after that visit? What? She said, real love doesn't try to drag you backward. Real love meets you where you've become. I swallowed hard. That sounds like her. Mrs. Delgado nodded, then smiled and returned to her garden. I watched her snip the dead heads off the roses with practiced hands. That afternoon, I drove to a hardware store 2 towns over, somewhere no one knew my name yet. I bought new locks for the front and back doors, good ones, heavy duty. I chatted with the clerk, a man named Lester, who took his time explaining how to install them. Changing locks is like hanging up a no trespassing sign for your soul. Empowering. When I got home, I pulled out Vivian's old toolbox and got to work. It took longer than I expected, but I didn't rush. I wanted every screw tight, every plate lined up perfectly. I tested the new keys 3 times. Each time, the lock clicked shut with the soft finality of something being sealed. Not against danger, but against intrusion. That night, I slept with my hand resting on the new keys beside my bed. And for the first time since Vivian's name appeared in my inbox, I knew I wasn't afraid of their visit. I wasn't bracing for it. I was ready. Saturday arrived wrapped in sunshine and nerves. I woke early and took extra time getting ready, showered, did my hair, chose the new navy dress I'd picked up from a local boutique. It was simple, but sharp. The kind of thing you wear when you want people to stop seeing you as fragile. The earrings were pearls, Vivian's, still in the velvet box she'd kept in the top drawer of her nightstand. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't see the woman who had slept in a freezing car 3 months ago. I saw someone who looked like she belonged here. LAX was chaos, as always. Holiday travelers elbowing past one another, families shouting across terminals, car horns blasting in the pickup lanes. I waited at baggage claim, watching for them, unsure how it would feel to see their faces again in this new context. Then, they appeared. Kelsey spotted me first, her lips parting in a brief smile. She looked tired, stretched thin by pregnancy, probably, but also something else. Tension. Her eyes searched my face as she stepped in for a quick hug. "You look different," she said. "I feel different," I replied. Darren was behind her, dragging 2 matching roller bags and wearing his usual smugness like cologne. He offered me a half hug, the kind you give someone you're trying not to touch too much. "This your car?" he asked when we reached the parking garage, nodding at the modest silver Prius I'd bought used. "It is." "Not bad. We figured you might have splurged on something fancy." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. They chatted during the drive, mostly Kelsey, filling the silence with updates about Ava's new daycare, Darren's growing responsibilities at work, the ever-expanding to-do list for baby number 2. I drove quietly, listening, nodding where appropriate. When we pulled into the hotel parking lot, Darren looked around critically. "This neighborhood's not bad. Might be worth looking at properties while we're out here. Never know what's on the market." I helped them with their bags and told them I'd pick them up in 2 hours for dinner. They nodded, already absorbed in checking their phones and confirming reservations. As I drove home, I saw them in the rearview mirror, standing close, whispering, plotting. But I had plans too. Dinner that night was at a local bistro, one of Vivian's old favorites, tucked behind a bookstore and lit with soft amber chandeliers. Darren had insisted we pick somewhere nice, which I interpreted as expensive enough to match the performance they'd come to deliver. Kelsey wore a sleek maternity dress. Darren had on a blazer. They looked like a couple ready to sell something. Over appetizers, Darren started in. "We've been thinking a lot about the future. It's important to build security, not just for us, but for the kids. Long-term vision, you know?" Kelsey jumped in, eyes glowing. "There's this house we found back home. It's perfect. 4 bedrooms, great schools, huge backyard. It even has an upstairs studio we could convert into a guest suite. For when you visit, of course. Or stay," Kelsey said sweetly. "Whenever you want. It would be your space." I sipped my wine. "It sounds nice." She took that as encouragement. "The only issue is the down payment. We're close, but with the baby on the way, it's a stretch. And we were thinking, maybe you could help." There it was, the request. Wrapped in smiles, sugar-coated with family language, but as transactional as a bank form. Darren leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "We're not asking for a handout, just something to get us over the hump. 50, maybe $60,000. Tops." He said it like he was asking for a ride home from school, like it wasn't an obscene request from someone who once left notes about my use of their dishwasher. Kelsey reached across the table and took my hand. "It would mean the world to us, Mom, really. And we'd pay you back, of course. Darren's got his next promotion lined up. Things are looking up." I looked down at her fingers curled around mine. Perfect nails, polished voice, rehearsed warmth. "Tell me how Ava's doing," I said, changing the subject. She smiled, genuinely, this time. "She's great. So excited for the baby. She talks to my stomach all the time, says she's going to teach the baby to count and sing." I felt something shift in my chest. I did miss Ava. That tiny voice, her arms around my neck. I missed what we'd started to build before everything changed. "Come home," Kelsey whispered. "We can be a real family again." I looked her in the eye. Was I part of the family when I was sleeping in my car? Darren sighed. "Here we go. No, really, I want to understand. Was I part of the family when you taped notes to the fridge? When I left and nobody followed?" "We let you stay with us," Kelsey said defensively. "That counts for something." "For 6 weeks. Until it got uncomfortable. Until you became something you needed to manage." Silence stretched between us. "We didn't know what to do," Kelsey said finally. "You didn't want to know. There's a difference." I stood up and excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment to breathe. In the mirror, I looked at the woman I'd become. Not just better groomed or better dressed, but steadier, clearer. Vivian's house had changed me. Not because it was beautiful or valuable, but because it reminded me of who I was when no one needed me to shrink. When I returned to the table, they were whispering. Darren clicked his phone screen off. "We'd like to see your place tomorrow," he said. "Of course," Kelsey added. "Maybe we could even stay the night, save the hotel bill, spend real time together." "No," I said quietly. They both looked up, startled. "Why not?" "Because it's my home, and I don't feel safe mixing this with that." "What does that even mean?" Darren asked. "It means the conditions you attach to love aren't welcome in the one place where I finally found peace." Kelsey's eyes filled with tears. "You're shutting us out." "I'm protecting myself." Darren scoffed. "So what? We flew across the country for nothing?" "You flew here to make a pitch. I listened. The answer is no." They sat there in silence. No one reached for the check. So I did. I paid for the meal and walked them to the car. As I pulled into the hotel driveway, Kelsey touched my arm. "Maybe tomorrow you'll feel differently. Maybe you'll remember who we are to each other." "Maybe," I said. But we both knew I wouldn't. That night, I didn't sleep much. I sat by the window with the curtains pulled open, sipping tea from Vivian's old porcelain cup. The neighborhood was quiet. Porch lights blinked off one by one. I could see Mrs. Delgado's silhouette moving slowly through her kitchen, putting away dishes, dimming the lights. My phone buzzed once around midnight. A text from Kelsey. "I love you, Mom. Don't forget that." I stared at the screen for a long time, then set it face down on the table. I didn't respond. In the morning, I made coffee and dressed with the same deliberate care I'd taken all week. The same navy dress, the same pearl earrings. If they wanted continuity, I'd give them a version of it, just not the one they remembered. At exactly 9:47 a.m., their rental car pulled into the driveway. Darren wore a business casual jacket and carried a thick folder under his arm. Kelsey had on sunglasses, despite the overcast sky. She looked tense, pale, her hands curled around her purse strap like it might fly away if she let go. I opened the door before they could knock and stepped onto the porch. "Morning," I said. "Sleep well?" "Fine," Darren replied shortly. "Can we come in? We don't have much time before our flight." "I think the porch is perfect for this conversation," I said, gesturing toward the wicker chairs. Kelsey blinked. "But we came all this way. We'd really love to see inside." "You'll see enough," I said softly. After a brief pause, they sat. Darren with a visible sigh, Kelsey with forced politeness. We talked last night, and we just want to say we're sorry if we came on too strong. We're just worried about you. I'm fine. More than fine. That's great, Darren said, already flipping open his folder. But we want to make sure you're thinking long term about retirement, taxes, maintenance costs. It's a lot to manage alone, especially at your age. My age. I bit back a smile. What did you have in mind? Well, he said, straightening his papers, this house is way too big for one person. And with California taxes, you could sell this place, buy a small condo back home, and still have enough left to help you. There was a pause. Kelsey tried to soften it. To help the family. Mom, it's about legacy, about building something for the next generation. What's the point of an inheritance if it doesn't help the people you love? Are you struggling, Chelsea? She blinked. No, not exactly, but with the baby and Darren's job, it's a stretch. A stretch you expect me to cover. Darren leaned forward, already irritated. You make it sound manipulative. It's not. It's family. This is what family does. I tilted my head. I slept in a car for 3 months. Here we go again, he rolled his eyes. No, I said, voice sharpening. Really, here we go. I want to be very clear. I lost everything. My home, my dignity, and no one came. No one helped. Kelsey sent polite texts while I shivered under a coat and kept quiet to keep the peace. Kelsey's eyes welled with tears. I thought you were okay. No, you hoped I was okay so you didn't have to face the guilt. She looked away. You've made it clear, I continued, that I am only welcome when I am useful. And I've decided not to be useful anymore. Darren scoffed. So you'd rather waste this opportunity, play old lady hermit in some stranger's house? It's not a stranger's house. It's mine. She left it to me because she understood what it means to be alone, and she trusted I'd know what to do with it. Yeah, use it to help your family. I stood slowly. This conversation is over. Kelsey stood too, desperate now. Please, Mom, we're not trying to hurt you. We just don't want to lose you. You lost me the moment you saw my suffering as a burden rather than a cry for help. She started to cry. Real tears. I believed that. But I didn't move toward her. I hope you'll find peace, and I hope your children never feel the way I did. We're your family, she whispered. No, you were my family. Now you're two people I used to love more than I loved myself. But I'm learning. I won't sacrifice my sanity to belong to anyone. Darren snapped his folder shut. This is unbelievable, he muttered. You're throwing everything away. No, I said. I'm protecting what I finally built. I watched them walk to their car without offering to follow. Darren climbed in, slamming the door. Kelsey lingered for one final look. I hope you'll realize how unfair this is. Maybe, but not today. As their rental disappeared around the corner, I sat on the porch again. Vivian's porch, my porch, and let the silence wrap around me like a quilt. I pulled out my phone and saw 4 missed calls from Kelsey. I deleted them without listening. Instead, I opened a new contact. Langston and Partners, Estate Law. Mr. Langston picked up after 2 rings. Miss Freeman, everything all right? Better than all right, I said. I'd like to talk about updating my will. What do you have in mind? I want to set up a scholarship for women over 50 starting over after hardship. And I want to leave the house to someone who'd actually appreciate what Vivian built here. Do you have someone in mind? I looked across the street. Mrs. Delgado was watering her roses with the same quiet grace she offered the world every day. Yes, I do. The days after their departure were strangely quiet. not just in the house, but inside me. I expected grief to hit harder, to fold me into regret or loneliness, but what I felt was closer to calm. Not relief exactly, but clarity. The kind of peace that follows a storm, when everything is broken open and honest. I went about my routines. Coffee on the porch, walks through the neighborhood, short chats with Mrs. Delgado over the fence. I even stopped by the community center and picked up a flyer for the Thursday night book club. Late Bloomers was next month's pick. I smiled at the title. Fitting. My phone remained off for 3 days. When I turned it back on, I found dozens of unread messages and voicemails from Kelsey. They started anxious. "Please, Mom, call me back. We didn't mean to upset you." Then they turned urgent. "We need to talk. Darren's really upset. This isn't you." And finally, they became cold. "If you're going to cut us off, just say so. Don't leave us guessing." I didn't reply to any of them, because there was nothing left to explain. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. On the 4th day, I finally texted, "I'm okay. Please respect my space." That evening, I joined the book club. Mrs. Delgado beamed when I walked in. "Told you you'd come around." There were 10 women gathered in the library room, all different ages, though most hovered around 50 and up. One brought lemon bars, another passed out lemonaded discussion guides like we were in school again. I hadn't realized how hungry I was for conversation that wasn't rooted in obligation. We talked about the book, we laughed. I stayed afterward to help clean up. It wasn't a grand gesture, just folding chairs, stacking cups. But it felt like stitching myself back into the world. On the walk home, Mrs. Delgado linked arms with me. "You've settled in," she said. "I have." "You look lighter." "I feel lighter." She nodded. "Sometimes you don't realize how heavy the expectations were until you finally set them down." That night, I pulled out the folder Mr. Langston had given me, the draft of my new will. It was simple. The scholarship fund for women over 50, a modest donation to the library, and the house, left to someone who'd use it the way Vivian intended. I slept well. For once, I didn't dream of cold car seats or distant text messages. I dreamed of gardens and lemon bars and clean beginnings. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Kelsey. Again. She left a voicemail this time, one I did listen to. "Mom, I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. Darren thinks you're being dramatic, but I get it. I know we hurt you. I don't want this to be permanent. Can you call me? Just tell me you're okay. Please." I sat with that for a long time. She sounded different. Real. Not performative, not rehearsed. I didn't call back, but I didn't block her either. Later that afternoon, I dropped off a box of Vivian's books at the library. Rosa, the head librarian, gave me a smile and a hug. "She'd be proud of you," she said. I hoped so. That weekend, I painted the porch. Just the railings and the swing, but enough to make it feel new. Mrs. Delgado came over with lemonade and kept me company while I worked. She told stories about Vivian, how she'd hosted summer brunches for the whole block, and how she and Evelyn used to win the community chili cook-off every year. Their secret was a dash of cinnamon, apparently. "You remind me of her," Mrs. Delgado said. "Me?" "Strong, quiet but not weak. Someone who doesn't yell to be heard." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just smiled and kept painting. Later that evening, I sat on the porch with a book from the club and a fresh mug of tea. The sunset spilled across the yard like melted gold. For the first time since I arrived, I let myself fully exhale. I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't hiding. This wasn't an escape. It was a return to myself. And I wasn't leaving. Not for guilt, not for pressure, not even for family. Especially not for family who only knew how to love me when I was small and easy. It was a Tuesday when the letter arrived. A thick white envelope, hand-addressed. No return address on the outside, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Kelsey. I held it for a long time before opening it, standing by the mailbox under the duranda tree. The blossoms had started to fall, carpeting the sidewalk in soft purples. Something about the moment felt cinematic, a slow-motion pause in a story that had finally found its rhythm. I took it inside, sat at the kitchen table, and opened it carefully. Inside was a folded sheet of paper. No formal greeting, just her handwriting, smaller than I remembered, a little shaky. Mom, I don't know what else to do, so I'm writing. I know you're probably still upset. I don't blame you. I think about you every day. Ava asks where Grandma went. I never know what to say. I wish I had handled things differently. I see now how we failed you. I see it in your silence. Darren still doesn't understand, but I'm starting to. I think. You always taught me to be strong, but I guess I never realized that strength doesn't mean silence. You were hurting, and I didn't listen. That's on me. I'm sorry for letting you feel disposable. I hope you're happy. I hope this house, this new life, I hope it gives you everything we didn't. Love, Kelsey. I reread it twice, a third time, and I cried. Not the sharp, hot tears I'd cried in the car when I left her driveway. These were quieter, sadder. Like something inside me had been waiting for this small piece of truth, even if it came too late to fix anything. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer where I kept my favorite pens and Vivian's recipe cards. Not quite forgiveness, but not rejection either. That afternoon, I walked over to Mrs. Delgado's house with a bag of fresh lemons from the backyard tree. She invited me in for tea, and we sat on her floral couch while she talked about her late husband, about Vivian, about the way time folds memory until everything feels closer than it really is. She said, "You're doing good, Nora. Don't let guilt sneak in wearing your daughter's face." I smiled sadly. "Even when it comes with an apology?" She said, "Especially then." She tapped her temple. "People apologize when they see consequences, not always when they feel remorse. Watch for the difference." I stayed for dinner. Her chicken enchiladas au flan she insisted wasn't store-bought, but absolutely was. We laughed, we drank iced tea, and we listened to the radio humming softly through her kitchen window. On my walk home, I passed the empty house 2 doors down. A for sale sign had gone up. I wondered who would move in, whether they'd bring kids, or a dog, or loud music on Friday nights. It didn't scare me, the idea of change. I'd survived worse. I was thriving now. That night, I turned my phone back on for a few hours. Ava had sent a voice recording, probably with Kelsey's help. A tiny voice saying, "I miss you, Grandma. I have a tooth loose. Mommy says it'll come out soon. Are you still in California?" I listened to it 6 times, then turned off the phone again, and wrote back. Not to Kelsey, but to Ava. A letter in crayon with a drawing of an orange tree, a sun, and a smiling grandma. I didn't know if Kelsey would give it to her, but I hoped she would. The next morning, I went to the community center and signed up to volunteer for the garden restoration program. Every Thursday, they needed help clearing brush, planting vegetables, and tending the greenhouse. The coordinator asked, "Are you sure you're up for manual labor?" teasing gently. I said, "I used to dig out flooded basements. I think I can manage a shovel." On my way home, I stopped by the cafe and ran into Rosa, the librarian. She said, "You're glowing!" I said, "I'm learning things." She said, "Like what?" I said that boundaries are not the same as walls. she said, and sometimes kindness means not opening the door but leaving the porch light on. Exactly, I thought. That night, I wrote a new version of the letter to Ava. Longer, softer. I included a photo of the orange tree and a pressed flower from Mrs. Delgado's garden. If Kelsey wanted to rebuild something, she'd have to start here, with honesty, with care, with proof that I mattered even when I had nothing to give. And if she didn't, I'd still be okay. Because for the first time in a long time, I was no longer surviving. I was living. Spring settled in slowly, like it was learning to trust the world again. The mornings grew warmer, and the scent of orange blossoms drifted through my kitchen windows. I opened the house more often now, windows up, music playing low, sunlight spilling across the hardwood floors that Vivian had kept spotless. The community garden became a ritual. Every Thursday, I wore the same sun hat, packed a thermos of lemonade, and spent hours with dirt under my nails and good people by my side. We laughed about aching backs and swapped stories about grown children, lost spouses, failed recipes. It felt like home. Not just the house, the life. Then, one afternoon, while planting marigolds, Rosa tapped me gently on the shoulder. "There's someone asking for you," she said, "outside the gate." I wiped my hands on my jeans, half expecting it to be Mrs. Delgado with more of her flawn. But it wasn't. It was Kelsey. Alone. No Darren, no kids, no big suitcase of explanations. She stood on the sidewalk in flat shoes and a cardigan too thin for the breeze. Her eyes were red, but not from fresh crying, the kind of red that comes from being exhausted in your soul. "Hi," she said softly. I stared at her. "How did you know I'd be here?" "She called Mrs. Delgado. She said you might not want to see me, but she also said she wasn't in the business of stopping people from trying." I didn't say anything. She took a slow breath. "Can we talk?" "I'm working," I replied, gesturing to the gloves in my hand. "Can I help?" I hesitated, then passed her a trowel. We worked side by side for almost an hour, pulling weeds, scooping soil, saying nothing. Finally, she sat back on her heels and looked at me. I left him. My hands paused mid-dig. "Darren," she clarified. "I left him 2 weeks ago. I moved into a small apartment across town. Took Ava with me." I didn't know what to say, so I kept digging. I realized I was trying to win a game I didn't even like playing. He always made me feel like love had to be earned, that being needy was weak. I was becoming him, Mom. I heard myself talking to Ava the way he talks to me, and it scared me. She wiped her face with her sleeve. I thought strength meant control, independence. But it doesn't. It means owning your choices, and sometimes apologizing, not just for what you did, but for what you didn't do. I leaned back, stretched my legs out, and stared at the little row of marigolds we'd just planted. "I never wanted your money. I know that now. I wanted to be seen, heard, loved without terms." She noted. "I see you now. I hear you. And I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to wake up." We sat there in the dirt, under the sun, as a few bees lazily circled the flowers. "I can't promise it'll be easy," she added. "But I want to rebuild, slowly, the right way. Not for Ava, for me, but also for her." I believed her. Not fully, not blindly, but enough to keep the door cracked. Later that evening, she and Ava came by the house. Ava ran straight to the porch swing and squealed when she saw the picture of the orange tree I'd drawn her. "You really live here, Grandma?" "I do." "It smells like cookies," she said, nose wrinkled in delight. "Can I sleep over someday?" "We'll see." Kelsey watched the exchange with quiet hope. Over tea, I asked, "What made you finally leave him?" She looked down. "He told Ava to stop crying, said only babies cry. She's 5. She just wanted a hug." That was all I needed to hear. That night after they left, I sat on the porch with a single thought in my heart. Sometimes the people you raise can still surprise you. And sometimes the best thing you can give them is the version of you who finally stopped waiting for their permission to live. Kelsey didn't move back in, and I didn't invite her to. But we started again, slowly, carefully, like two people walking barefoot across a frozen lake, unsure if the ice would hold. She called every few days, sometimes just to say hello, sometimes to ask about gardening or to share a photo of Ava holding up a drawing or grinning with a missing front tooth. I sent back photos of marigolds in bloom, of Mrs. Delgado teaching me how to make tortillas, of a quiet sunrise over the orange grove. It wasn't reconciliation, it was recognition. We were learning to speak without old weapons, without guilt. When Ava came to visit the following weekend, she ran through the house barefoot, giggling like she'd always known the place. "Grandma, this room smells like flowers." "That's Vivian's soap," I told her. She liked lavender. "Did she have a cat?" "She had a dog, a grumpy little one." Ava nodded solemnly. "I think he'd like me." I think he would too. We made lemonade together that afternoon. Real lemons from the tree, sugar Ava spilled all over the floor, ice cubes she insisted on crushing with a wooden spoon. Later, while she napped on the porch swing, I found Kelsey standing at the edge of the garden, watching the sky turn soft with sunset. "She's happy," I said quietly. "She is," Kelsey whispered. "And I think I'm starting to be." I looked at her for a long moment. There were lines around her eyes I hadn't noticed before. The kind that come from nights spent worrying, from choices made too late. But there was something softer now, too. Something open. "Did you ever love him?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. "I think I loved what I thought he could make me. Confident. Important. Safe." "And did he?" "No. He made me small." The wind shifted gently, carrying the scent of orange blossoms. "I made you small, too, by treating your pain like it was inconvenient, by measuring your worth by what you could give me." I didn't flinch. "You were scared." "I was selfish." I didn't deny it. She turned toward me. "If you never fully forgive me, I'll understand." I'm not sure forgiveness is the goal anymore. Maybe just truth. That night, after they left, I sat with Vivian's old photo albums. In one of them, there was a picture of her and Evelyn standing in this very garden, arms looped around each other, laughter frozen midair. They had aged, yes, but they were radiant. Not because of youth, because they were exactly where they belonged. I closed the book and looked out the window. The porch light glowed, the garden shimmered with twilight. The house, once filled with another woman's memories, now held echoes of mine. I wasn't healed, but I was healing. Piece by piece, lemon by lemon, word by word. The next morning, I got a call from the community center. "Nora," the director said, "we've had someone make a sizable donation to the garden program under their name." I blinked. "What?" "They said you'd changed their life, wanted to give back." I didn't need to ask who it was. Later that afternoon, a new plaque appeared by the greenhouse. Hand-painted, sweet, and simple. In honor of new beginnings. I touched it lightly, then stepped back. Because this was it. The full circle, the life I didn't plan for, but had chosen. The house was no longer just a gift, it was my statement. That I could be left behind, overlooked, rejected, and still bloom, still root, still rise. 6 months later, I hosted my first garden party. It wasn't anything fancy, just neighbors, folding chairs, lemonade, and a spread of potluck dishes that overflowed the picnic tables. Mrs. Delgado made her famous flan, a real one this time, and Rosa brought a crate of books for people to borrow. Kelsey and Ava came early to help set up. Ava wore a yellow sundress and raced through the orange grove with a pink butterfly net, trying to catch the breeze. Kelsey worked quietly, arranging flowers into mason jars, occasionally glancing at me to make sure she was still welcome. She was, in the way that people are when they've stopped taking presents for granted. Midway through the afternoon, I stepped onto the porch with a lemonade in each hand, scanned the crowd, and exhaled. My yard was full of laughter, the sound of music and new stories. No tension, no transactions, just peace. Later, as the sun dipped behind the hills and guests began to trickle home, Kelsey stayed behind with Ava, helping fold chairs and collect paper plates. "You're good at this," I said. "At what?" "Hosting. Creating space." "I learn from the best," she said quietly. Ava interrupted, holding up a tiny green sprout in a paper cup. "Grandma, look, Ms. Rosa helped me plant this." "What is it?" "A tomato," she beamed. "Can I keep it here so you can take care of it when I'm at school?" I knelt beside her. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll make sure it grows strong." Kelsey watched us, her eyes misting slightly. "She talks about you all the time, so she wants to live here when she's older." "She's always welcome," I said. "And me?" I stood, met her gaze. "I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be real." She nodded slowly. "I'm trying. I can see that." We didn't hug. We didn't make speeches. But something passed between us in that moment. The kind of healing that doesn't need a declaration to be true. Later that evening, after they'd gone, I cleaned up the porch and sat down with a fresh cup of tea. The moon was rising over the hills. The swing creaked softly beside me, a familiar lullaby in the quiet. I thought about everything this house had witnessed. Grief, betrayal, loneliness, but also courage, rebirth, peace. Vivian had once been a stranger to me, and yet she'd left me the most important inheritance of all. Not the walls or the land, but the belief that I still had a life worth claiming. That no matter how far I'd fallen, there was a place where I could plant myself and begin again. I reached for my notebook, the one I'd started keeping after book club meetings, and wrote down one simple line. "I am no longer the woman who begged to be chosen. I am the woman who finally chose herself." And with that, I stood, turned off the porch light, and let the night hold me in its quiet, knowing arms.